So, welcome. I noticed that your moniker, your author moniker on your book is TM Krieg. Is that what you go by?
That is my pen name. I've always wanted to have a pen name. It actually, funny story, is my gamer tag.
That's really cool. What games do you play?
I'm in the video game industry. I ran Xbox 360 for a while, and now I'm NVIDIA game platforms. So I play all sorts of games. Latest is Borderlands 3 that just came out. But I've done World of Warcraft, League of Legends, Assassin's Creed, lots of different kinds of games. So me myself, I was considering Borderlands for a while, but I'm not sure. It got some mixed reviews, so I don't know what you think about it. I'm not a bit. Oh well, it's kind of interesting. They continue to push on the storyline and create new concepts with the artwork. I think I play it more for the artwork and looking at the storyline more than anything else. Just to look at it, but I'm not as impressed with this one. It's getting a lot of. I've heard the mixed reviews as well. So.
And so, is this your first time writing?
This is my first time publishing and writing. I've been writing books, I would say, since I was around 7 years old. My mother encouraged, and my father as well, encouraged all of us to write daily in journals. Any ideas or thoughts or inspiration that came to our minds. And so writing has been something that I've done fairly frequently, almost every day for all of my life.
That's really great, though, that you got one published out right now. That's really cool.
It is. The publishing of the book it's a combination of small stories and ideas that I've been putting together for a number of years. A lot of it is centered around my kids, and this book is kind of an amalgamation, bringing a lot of those stories that I would tell for their bedtime and bringing it together in one book and trying to make sense of all the stories and tie it all together.
And for, those out there watching, first of all, what's the name of your book and what sort of thing can they expect from it?
The name of the book is The Drake Epics, Journey to Kara. And I think, as readers jump into the book, I think a lot of it is based on fantasy. It's based on a boy's dreams and that come to reality. And he's taken to another time and era and gets to explore himself and figure out who he is without a lot of the encumberments that you face on a daily basis. So it's basically an exploration and a journey to find himself, which he does at the end by overcoming some of the monsters that he finds, either monsters in humankind or in animals or even in the environment.
Cool. And so what is the sort of target demographic for your book, if you have one?
Well, I like to think that the target demographic is anyone who likes to dream, who likes to think about what might be, and that can include any number of individuals. I've had individuals who were teenagers, who were, a little older adults, and all enjoy the book and read it because it allows them to kind of step outside of themselves and to experience an environment that's unique and different from this world.
Is there something because I know you mentioned your children just before, is there something, in your children's imagination that was sort of inspiring for the series?
It is. Actually, the funny thing is it's modeled after my children. I have the characters' names are the same as my children's names, Christian, Ethan, and Olivia. Her tag name is Lola that she goes by. But all of their personalities are worked into this. And these, again, the stories that I would tell them at night, of course, would integrate my children into the storyline because it would make it more compelling and interesting for them. And as I thought about my journey in this book, I started with maybe some fictional characters, but I quickly realized that it lost some of the meaning in the stories that I told my children. And so I quickly reintegrated them into that and developed their personalities, much to their own chagrin. It follows very closely to their personalities throughout the book, and that gives it that sense of reality because it's actually who they really are.
Yeah, including their flaws and everything, which I'm sure they don't want to read about.
Their flaws and everything, which they are not appreciative of in some points. I also wrote it when they were when they were younger, and so
Right.
some of their quirks when they were younger, well, they've overcome those now, and so they look back and say, "I didn't really do that." I said, "Oh, yes, you did," and we decided to put it into the book. So.
And I was poking around the synopsis that you have up on Amazon for one of the books in the series, and one thing I found interesting is that it mentioned time travel, which I know whenever time travel is involved, there's an extra sense of complication that happens.
There is, and that's part of what is weaved into this. As I'm already working on the second book. I'm about halfway through that book, and let's just say that time travel continues, and it continues to build in complexity. There are certain characters in the book who know know more about the children than they know, and as the trilogy starts to form, the children start to know more about these individuals than individuals know about them as the books continue. So it does add that complexity, but it adds some of that mystery into it as well, not self-discovery.
I was told that one of the big themes, if not in your writing, but for you as a person, is your faith. Is that something, that influenced your writing or the themes in the book a lot?
It very much is. If you read within the book, there's a lot of subtle mentions of what I believe. I have a very strong belief in a faith, in a higher power, and that is included in the conversation that happens between the children and the other characters in the book. It happens in their thoughts and in their actions. Some of the trials that they go up against. My belief is that in this life, we're here to grow and to learn. And so always taking more experiences and learning from those experiences is what really makes life worthwhile.
Great. Yeah, I always find it inspiring to talk to, people of faith who, want to explore the themes of the faith, in their art form, which, sometimes can be lacking a little bit. So it's great to hear someone who wants to integrate those themes into a book that can, appeal to a wide array of people. Me personally, I write screenplays, so I have probably almost every one of my screenplays, a big theme of the book has to do with, these grand ideas of, what really life is for and, what our role is in it. So I really love books that touch on that theme.
I couldn't agree more. I think what you find in the book is finding truth in sincerity of heart, and that really is part of self-discovery and discovering who you are, so that you can know yourself as you're known and see yourself as you are seen.
Is this book, or tell me something about the publishing process for this book. How did you get to the point where you could put it out there for people to read?
Well, that was an interesting journey. I think I started in the writing process in bringing together all of my ideas, trying to make a common theme across those stories that I used to tell to my children. And then a big part of that was writing it down, then compiling that together, having that constant flow so that you had the appropriate beginning, middle, and end for the storyline. And then the publishing was just a great experience. You look at Rune Publishing, and part of this was going through and working on the editorial pieces, the removal of certain text, the addition of text, being able to build the interplay between different stories so that it had a contiguous pattern to it. And that was really an undertaking to go through that process. I also did a lot of the drawings on my own, and wow. that was pretty fun in looking at the chapter headings and and coming up with those particular drawings and being able to take different examples and help to build into that storyline to give the story more life. And then, of course, going through the publishing process, again, Room Publishing is amazing. Just being able to walk through that and looking at all of the copies and the copy edits that were coming back into my hands, doing the re-reviews, working on a lot of the editorial for that, and then ultimately getting to publish and the cover pages and writing up a lot of those pieces. That was it was a fun journey to see that process up front. I'd never experienced anything along those lines, and I think it actually added a little bit to my creativity when I started to realize that this was going to be viewed and read by numerous people. It gave that story a little bit more life. It's a great process, though.
And have you had any help promoting your book, post publishing?
I have. Eastern Marketing has been Far Eastern Marketing has been great. As I look at the stories that we write, if we don't promote those stories and get the word out for the stories, then no one will ever read them. And so that's a very important part of the process that is followed. And I think Far Eastern Marketing has done just a tremendous job in helping to get the word out there. And I look forward to continuing to work with them to ensure that the whole world hears about the Drake Epic's Journey to Kara.
Is there a step in the process that was particularly challenging or that you learned the most from?
I think it was the compilation and building the fillers for the contiguous storyline. I found to be most challenging. Some of these stories that I would tell my kids were very disparate, and there were a lot of the stories that I haven't published. I have oodles of stories that I did not include or I had to remove from that process as I was trying to look at the size of the book and holding out for maybe putting some of the stories in the sequel and into the trilogy, into the second and third books as well. So I found that probably the most challenging for me. The ideas seemed to flow because this had been a journey. I've been writing since I was young, as I explained previously, and then of course all the stories that I would tell my children. The stories were all there. They were up in the head, and just reiterated over time. It was just getting those down in written form, and then making sure that I was able to tie that all together so that it made sense as a story. That was the most challenging, I think.
Yeah, sometimes things come in like, images and things like that, and really gluing them together, and then sometimes shaving off things that you really love can be really the difficult part.
Well, it becomes your baby. The story is line is your baby, and it's hard to slash things out of the storyline, but it's needed in order to keep the continuous flow. I still get feedback. I have individuals in my family that want me to further develop and do some offshoots, even from the trilogy that's being written, from some of the ideas and some of the stories that were built into this first book. And so they continue to pester me, I would say, to say, hey, when can we, when do you finish your trilogy so that we can start in some of these offshoots?
That's awesome encouragement. That's very important to have that kind of close encouragement.
It is family. That's another one of my beliefs. It's all about family and coming together. And I think, in terms of being fulfilled as an author, I wanted to get these stories out. I wanted others to enjoy them. But for the most part, it was much more of wanting my family, my broader family, to enjoy these stories as well, instead of just my kids. And that's primarily what drove me to finally write and publish the first book, and now working on the second book and the third book, was to get these stories out there and to share with my family members and friends, and then also with the broader community.
Great. And is there a part of your book that has come to be your favorite, or a little moment that you're really proud of?
I'll say that there are many parts that I'm proud of. I think a lot of the energy that went into this book and from the stories was more of either embellishing on the stories or trimming them up. One in particular area was when Ethan faces off with his great oppressor, the dragon Tiamat, that I'm really proud of. And a lot of this is kind of summarizing some of the toil and the trouble that he faced throughout his journey, and then kind of coming together and having him face his biggest enemy head on. I could read part of that for you if you're interested.
Yeah, go ahead.
His attack on Tiamat from deep within the beast's subconscious. The dragon's defenses held for the time being, but the boy could tell Tiamat's strain. Then he remembered all of his dreams about the dragon. He remembered the king and the queen, the grove of trees, the crop from the monster's memory, and the most precious white fruit that came when called upon by someone who was worthy. It had all led up to this moment. All he needed to do now, in this, his greatest time of need, was to have a truly righteous desire. So he focused on that desire, and he strove for it. To the boy's delight, the white fruit appeared in front of him, raised upon an altar. Ethan gratefully reached out for it and took hold. Tiamat shrieked in fury and pain. "No! Bow to me! I am your master!" His face contorted and twisted in rage. Well, I'll stop there. You've got to read the book to find out what happens.
No, that's beautiful. That's very beautiful language. And yeah, I guess the final thing then is, is there anything, words of wisdom for any future authors out there, or, just people in general? I'm sure you have wisdom to share about, what you've learned in life.
Well, I'll tell you, I was sharing this with one of my nephews. He has aspirations of writing as well, and he's writing stories. Whenever I talk to individuals, I tell them to write everything down. If you have a thought in the middle of the night and you wake up from a dream, turn on the light, have a notepad by your bed, sit up, write down your thoughts on that notepad. Those become the kernel of the story that you can take and embellish and improve upon. And so always being ready to write down your thoughts as you think about the topic, ideas, and will evolve and will come around the story. And as you go throughout your daily activities, you'll find different elements that you can add to that story. That, I believe, that true creativity is what is built from that discipline of always having a notepad at your ready and writing down any of your thoughts or anything that comes to mind. That would be my first piece of advice. The second piece of advice is to ensure that as you think about stories and reading books, think about how that story comes together from the beginning through the middle and to the end. And as you take those kernels and that creativity from the kernels that you're writing down, either from dreams or from sleep or ideas during the day that come to you, that will enable you to expand upon that and write it into a full-fledged story that you can share with others. And I believe that serving others and sharing with others is the greatest way for mankind to learn. It's how we learn and grow, because we have to step out of ourselves. We have to take that chance and that risk of maybe being laughed at a little bit, and sometimes that's good. You write something down and write a story, and someone will laugh at it. And maybe it's a comedy. You never know. But creation is something that anyone can do. You just have to put your mind to it and make sure that you write down all of your thoughts. So there were a couple of tidbits in there of advice, but I do believe that anyone can write down stories and improve upon them.
Yeah, I 1000% can attest to all of that advice. All of that is something that, especially writing down ideas as soon as I have them, something I wish I made more of a rule in my life earlier on, because
Stories just by not writing it down quickly from dreams or whatnot. it just goes by the wayside and life takes over and you lose them. They just aren't there anymore. So.
Well, thank you so much for spending your time with us. I totally know that this has been an encouraging, chat for me. Just a lot of things resonating with how I like to create and all that stuff too. So thank you so much for being with us.
Well, I appreciate the time. Thank you very much.